Hello, everyone, and welcome to my Wednesdays at One show. We have an exciting show today. Obviously, everybody's been glued to their TVs, glued to their Twitter feeds, and their sources of news because we're in an election. And I say that we're in it because yesterday was the voting day, but we're still counting votes after all this time. So I thought I'd bring together a collection of people that I know, people that I respect their opinions, even if I differ from them. And I thought we would talk about politics overall, this election specifically, and just hear from some people's perspectives that maybe are different. When I speak for myself, I say that I try not to, in my day in and day out world, talk about politics, mainly because I'm an entrepreneur. And as it turns out, these guys that I have with me today, they're all entrepreneurs. I didn't plan it that way, but I tend to be a neutral person. Even if someone begins to speak about politics, I try to just stay mum, basically, and get back to the business at hand. But everyone goes about it different. Some people are more upfront with how they feel. Some people like to kind of maybe leave it for interpretation. So, with that, let me introduce my guests one by one. Starting at the top, I have Tony Hippolyte. Tony, thank you so much for being here. Tony's returning, and he actually helps me out a lot on getting these shows and putting these shows together. So, I'm always glad to have you on the show, even though you're always working with me behind the scenes to help it be a better show. So, thank you for being here, Tony. Secondly, I have Chris Palermo. Chris is an old friend and colleague. He is someone that has some really strong feelings about his politics, and he makes no apologies, and he makes sure that you know about it. And that's what I actually admire and respect about him, and why I asked him to be on the show today. So thank you for being here, Chris.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm glad we can connect like this.
Absolutely. And then finally, I have Daniel Mance. Daniel is very special, near and dear to my heart, because, yes, he is my cousin. And he's doing some great things. He just moved to Miami, and I'm happy to have him here. But Daniel, a military vet from the Air Force, he has some strong feelings about his politics as well. And he's, I won't say he's always talking about those things, but he doesn't leave any doubt. If you talk to Daniel, even just for a few minutes, he's going to let you know exactly how he feels. So that's why I brought these guys in today. And so we're going to have a frank discussion. I've asked my guys to be respectful because we have differing ideas. We have differing perspectives. We come from different places politically. My hope is that we find some common ground, but if we don't, it's okay. I'd rather just have the conversation and let that speak for itself. So just starting off, I'm going to ask each of you to tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your voting experience this election cycle, and if you feel comfortable, who you voted for and why. And I'm going to start with you, Daniel.
Okay. Well, my voting experience was a little different than most because I was moving across the country as I was doing it. Nevertheless, I registered. Well, I recently moved from Nashville to Arkansas for a year, and then I ended up, coming on down to Miami, not too long ago. Nevertheless, I had to re-register the vote, because I changed states, and then, I had to mail in my vote, as I was actually moving down here to Miami, and I guess I didn't, side with either major party, in either Democratic or Republican. Reason being is because, I saw flaws on both ends. Though I'm normally, siding with the conservative side. I have, I guess, voted purple all the way down for the most part, and kind of mix things up. However, this time around, I kind of dug a little bit deeper into policy than I have in the past, given that I'm a little bit older. Nevertheless, I ended up voting for Jo Jorgensen. Granted, she has hardly any chance in the world of being elected. I'd like to think that I'm beginning a trend and speaking to people about raising awareness of voting outside of the two major political parties.
Okay, so yeah, you surprised me this morning when we talked. I thought for sure you were I call them 45ers. You were a 45er, and that's a perfect example of maybe some of the assumptions we make about people's politics, and without actually talking to them. I can tell you that Daniel and I have had lots of conversations. I don't think we've ever talked about politics, but I knew enough from the things that he's put out there that I knew he leaned conservative. So I was actually surprised this morning when you told me that you went third party, but I'm so glad you did. And it's right on brand for you, Daniel. You are a free thinker. You're someone who just does not conform in any way. So thank you for sharing that. And Chris, I'm going to go to you. Now, Chris, I know you have some strong feelings. Tell us about your experience voting this year, and why, who you voted for and why, if you feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, sure. Well, I went in, I really would have preferred, like most conservatives, to go in on the actual election day, because I believe that, and I think why we saw a record turnout, people would walk in. There's something about seeing that ballot go right through the machine and get counted. But I went to the early voting at City Hall this year, knowing, because in 2016, I have three boys, and my youngest was his first time voting, and his name is Christopher Palermo too. So in 2016, my oldest son, whose name is Tyler Christopher Palermo, we went in, and immediately when I went in to vote, the woman, the poll worker, crossed off his name, my son's name. I said, no. So that would have meant when he came in that he wouldn't have been able to vote. So I knew there was going to be an issue, and it gets better here. Bear with me here.
Yeah.
So my son and I, Christopher Jr., we walk into City Hall, and she said, okay, let's see. So I said, well, if I showed you my ID, we wouldn't have this problem now, would we? So she said, okay, well, we'll have to go through birthdays, because obviously we both have the same name. And she said, well, who's Christopher John? I said, we're both Christopher John Palermo. She said to me, which, because, I'm pretty jovial, she said, I guess I should assume you weren't born in 2002. I said, oh, is that right? I said, so now we have the process of elimination here. So that's how we found out. So if you follow me here, we went through all these methods here, and there was some sort of form of identification right there, right? So anyways, we walked in, and it was an incredible moment. And by the way, he's going to be going into the Coast Guard. I have a guy in the Marines, and thank you, Daniel, for your service. Thank you very much. So we went in, and he was well informed on the ballot questions. And I'll tell you, man, it's local politics that really count, because you can see now what the issue is. What's really mattering more than ever is the electoral vote, right? But here, as far as the senators, I was curious to see, Ed Markey, and up here in my congressional district, the actual numbers. So we made it clear that we were going to vote for the local people too, and we both voted for Donald Trump, because I personally haven't thrived more than I have thrived professionally in the last 4 years, and I don't attribute it. I'm not going to, give it all to Donald Trump, but I started a couple of radio shows, financially and just professionally. Me personally, and I've seen a lot of people. And another way to gauge, and Eric, you probably can relate to this here, the way I can tell, and I did a lot of radio production and advertising. Advertising is way up in the last few years. So if people have some money to advertise, the economy generally, and as we discuss here in the next 40 minutes or so, you're going to find that I'm mainly a fiscal conservative, and I'll talk a lot about business here. I do have some, social concerns too, but one of my big reasons for voting for Trump is how strong he is fiscally. And I want everybody to prosper. Everybody, to move
Yeah,
forward.
and we're gonna get back to that. We're gonna get back to the business side.
Sure.
Of it too,
So
but
that's it.
I
So
wanna
I'll
make sure
toss
that
it back. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to make sure I get Tony in.
Sure,
too, but we're gonna delve in on a little bit of that. You
Yeah.
made a couple of good points, but Tony, tell us a little bit about how your voting experience was, and if you feel comfortable telling us who you voted for.
Voting experience was actually pretty straightforward. I did have the option to mail in, but I wanted to go in and vote personally. It was just something. It was just a personal choice. I went back to my parents' town, voted. There was no line. The town's relatively small, so it wasn't intense. But my dad told me that a lot of people mailed in their town. I voted Democratically for Biden. He wasn't personally my first choice on the Democratic side, but that's what I chose on my side. I generally lean on a liberal side, but I wouldn't say a true blue. I do have some, conservative bullet points, if you will, but for the most part, I would like to call myself a progressive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And I'll just let you guys know that, I voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And for me, it was a sort of there was a personal part of it to me. When I look at the four candidates for president and vice president, what I see three people that kind of look like the past. And I see one person who looks like the future. And as is the case with Kamala Harris, she's a Black woman, a graduate of Howard University. It just so happens that my daughter is a Black woman and is a graduate of Howard University. So for me, when I look at Kamala Harris, who's probably around my age, I actually see the future. When I look at the other three candidates, I see a version of what I've always seen my entire life. So I'm looking forward. I'm trying to look into, the years and the world that my daughter will live in, not so much where I'll be living, and what would I want for her, or how would I want her to go forward in her life. So that really was, it was really for me a lot about Kamala Harris being on the ticket with Joe Biden. I like Joe Biden. I wouldn't say that I love him, but I don't think I've ever voted for a Republican in my whole life. So I don't know if that makes me true blue, but that's my personal story. But I want to go back to something that Chris, you touched on, and actually I touched on a little bit too at the beginning, and that's the entrepreneurial or the business aspect. Now, Chris, you said you started a couple of businesses. There's some advertising dollars that are out there. But what I really want to ask you, because I know part of your background is movies, mm-hmm. is how has being a conservative, a very vocal conservative, impacted you in your business relationships and even your personal relationships?
You know what? I am probably too loose in giving people the benefit of the doubt, which I think I'm an extremely fair person. And for a long time, let's talk specifically here, a casting director. I'm an actor in addition to many things I do. So if I'm scrolling through Facebook and a casting director, and for those out there that really aren't familiar with a casting director, is the person that, books and hires somebody to work in a film. I think that person should be booked and hired. Well, of course, looks are everything too. I also think that, your resume, your work ethic should be really looked at before your politics. So if I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see a casting director say, if you are one of those racist piece of garbages that support Trump, unfriend me now. Now, this is not just locally, but nationwide. I've had, I've worked, across a good part of the country in acting gigs. So you tell me, how does, and geez, God, I hate to, paint a broad picture, because this is not the case with all casting directors or all producers. I'll give you an example. Last spring, I was booked in a table read that was going to come up to be a play, and I was booked as a mafia character. Who knew? So the casting director zips off an email to me, and the first line was, and there's no politics involved. I said, well, sir, are you saying this to everybody else? Or that's fine, I respected that, but let's be a little more subtle about it. But anyways, what I'm getting at, if a casting director has such strong feelings and says, unfriend me, I would really hope that they would certainly overlook me personally. In my shows, I've been a producer, casting director, 12 episodes. I'm going to tell you something. I just see people. I produced a local web series here called Pizza Makers, a scripted series. Eric, I want to tell you, I've had cast members lambast me publicly on Facebook saying, Chris Palermo, I'm not hanging around. I don't want to be associated with the likes of somebody like you that is associated with Donald Trump, your leader, your hero. And I said, you know what? I'm sorry to hear that. I'm going to leave this comment up for everybody to see. And then they, of course, they delete it, and it's kind of tough to win an argument with me sometimes. But I just ask my wife. But I think that's kind of silly. I would never ever, like Eric or or Danny, Tony, if you guys are right for a part, I really don't care. I don't care who you like, or for a job. I mean, for a job, and I. And we'll touch on it here. I guess I'll say it here. I think, there was a time and place when affirmative action was absolutely needed now, and then I hear stories of a movie actor on a big set that was starting to call out people because there weren't enough certain colors representing on the set. There aren't enough black folks. Well, he told the director, and he had to start pulling out the people that were African American. They were hired. I am just a big proponent. And listen, I love diversity. I owned pizza places, and you know what? I didn't want pizza every night. Do you know what I wanted? I want Mexican food. I want Chinese food. But if you're going to go, and I just am not. This is where I think the racial tensions. I think people really resent a lot of people for that. But, and I'll toss this to you guys here in a second, but the ironic thing is about acting, especially background actors, what you get picked for, essentially me, right? Check this out, it's the most stereotypical shadow thing in the world, because when a casting notice comes in, it'll say, I would like, please submit a large ethnic Italian mafia-looking person. That's how I make my bread and butter. I'm not offended.
Yeah.
So there you go. So to answer your question, I think listen, I can't start accusing people of denying me gigs, but let's be real, guys. All right, someone out there might say, Chris is a big Trump guy, and like you said, I'm unapologetic about it. I don't want him on my set. I've had this is funny. When we're eating over in the holding area, I've cleared whole tables out. People have taken their trays up and walked away from me because they didn't want to sit and eat with me.
Wow, that's a serious. That's a lot right there.
I'm not exaggerating here.
That's really eye-opening to me because like I said, I don't doubt that these things happen, but I'm always amazed when I hear it directly from someone who's experienced it. So that's really.
I have
surprising.
screenshots.
Oh, I'm sure you do, and that's where we live.
Yep.
Daniel, let me ask you, because you, while you've worked for different firms, I know, essentially even under their umbrella, you're responsible for your own. I mean, you have to sing for your own supper. You have to really kill it with your sales and all of your networking. Have you ever had any pushback because of your politics?
Personally, I haven't. Socially, yes, but as far as business, not necessarily. I'm pretty good on, I guess, walking the fine line on understanding what offends people and what doesn't offend people. I believe that at its core, we all want what's best for ourselves. So when I do express my views, I'm very mindful on exactly what I say, though at times it may seem as if I'm not necessarily, I guess, impartial, because I do tend to side more conservatively. I like to express why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. Socially, I have experienced, certain things, I guess, from the left, who I guess don't like the idea of Black people having the ability to make our own decisions and vote for who we want to vote for. The famous quote, from Joe Biden: "If you ain't Black, if you don't vote for Trump, or if you vote for me, you ain't Black," or something, whatever it is.
How insulting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have friends, who, they share that same ideology. However, when you ask people aside from, their I guess their aptitude to want to vote for the Democratic Party and to ask for reasons as to why, and many times they're hard pressed. And I say that to say that it seems as if social media and media in general has found a way to, I guess, demonize people who disagree with, I guess, the popular vote. It seems as if mob rules in a certain manner. And I can articulate and go down the gambit of reasons as to why I absolutely detest this I guess the presidential candidates that we have in front of us today, who will probably get a decision tomorrow. But just having the aptitude or the candid, I guess, demeanor and saying like, hey, I don't like these people, kind of puts you on the outskirts. Like Chris was saying. People haven't been disrespectful to me, but yesterday, actually, for instance, and I really don't want to go down a rabbit hole, so I'll give it up here in a second. But yesterday, I was on a post, and I don't really get on social media as much as I did in the past, because right now it seems like it's a really toxic environment. But there's the woman who I actually served with. These people don't even know I served with her. They don't know that we're actually from back in the service. And she was simply asking who's going to win, and then after they announced Texas, she was like, oh wow, Trump is going to win, and if she's happy for it, great. But another Black man, like myself, and I really don't want to make it a black and white issue, but we say that we're voting for Biden for Black reasons. The second she said, oh wow, it looks like Trump is going to win, he started making jokes about her being his girlfriend, or doing sexual favors and things. And I'm like, man, this I think that we should have some human decency to allow people to think for themselves and to vote on what's best for them. I vote for whoever I think is going to put me and my family in the best position, be that Joe Biden or Donald Trump. I'm going to vote for whoever I think is going to put me and my family in the best position. I don't care who it is. And I think that, society has taken that privilege away from Black people, all in all, because if we decide to go elsewhere, we're demonized by our own people until, I and many other Black men decided that we're not going to vote for, Biden. We've never experienced racism. I've experienced some, here and there, but not at the level of I'm getting from my own people, saying, hey, yeah, I'm stepping off the political plantation and I'm going to make my own decision. So.
Mm-hmm. No, and Daniel, that's why I have you here, because you and Chris and Tony, you guys don't hold back. Tony, let me ask you same question. As an entrepreneur, as somebody who a big part of your job is to network and make connections. How open are you with your political beliefs, and have those beliefs ever cause you to lose business?
Me personally, I don't talk about politics with my clients at all, personally, because I think at the end of the day, you need to hire me for my ability. If you are a Democrat or a Republican and you decide to choose, you decide to take your business elsewhere because of my political leanings, then we don't need to be in business, personally. And I think that's and especially politics is so complex and so nuanced and so sensitive that I'm already trying to, I'm a marketer, so I'm already trying to service you in a very complex thing. I'm trying to help your business grow, or I'm trying to build you a website, or things of that nature. Why am I going to go down this rabbit hole about, all right, policy in Section 8, 1, 2, 3? Like, it's not worth it to me personally. But the thing is, just to kind of touch on the point that Chris and Danny were talking about, we can look at both candidates and nitpick a lot of things that they said. Like, yeah, Biden did say the comment, you ain't black if you don't vote for me. But also Trump also mentioned that black people are too stupid to vote for him. We can go down those punch lists, those lines of those commentaries. But at the end of the day, me as a black man and first generation, parents that came from the Caribbean, I'm looking for the candidate that's going to act in my best interest, as anybody should. Danny chose to vote differently because he's like, hey, those two guys on the ballot just are not doing it for me. But for me personally, I voted for who I voted for because now my job is to hold that guy accountable. Say, hey, I need you to do these certain things, and I need you to really push these policies forward to help my community and help my organization. And and every organization does that, whether it's people who are very pro Second Amendment, LGBTQ, civil rights, so on and so forth. Those people are going to act in their best interest. But when we talk about the polarizing effects of a Trump presidency, we also have to realize the power of social media. There was a movie that was recently released called The Social Dilemma that breaks it down beautifully about how someone from the left can be like, how are they so stupid? How can they not see this? Or someone from the right saying, how are they so stupid? How can they not see this? When you don't realize that the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world and the Twitters of the world literally control what you see. So if they know that, I'll just use myself as an example. They know that I'm, pro, Essentia water, and that's the candidate. It's gonna feed me more of those information, whether the information is true or false. And that's why we have to be cognizant of that. Me personally, I have friends of mine who have totally opposite political views of me, but we are very good friends. We have our arguments, whatever, but we move on. At the end of the day, we don't want to think the same. We want to have these cognitive discussions, cognitive discourse, where we can say, hey, why do you feel this way? How do you feel this way? And I can tell you from personal experiences, I've had people become hostile because I'm like, hey, I'm not for Trump. And it wasn't even like it was provoked. It was just like, I just don't like the guy. They're like, how can you not like him? He's done more for this. And I'm like, I can give you 35 reasons why I don't like the man, but that's not a reason for us to be hostile, But, and then even within my own party, quote unquote, I have had people be hostile because I wasn't supportive of Hillary Clinton. I wasn't supportive of another Democratic candidate or whatever it is. But the thing is, right now, the shameful part is that adults are not acting like adults right now. We were worried about people rioting the day after the election because of whether the results were going to go one way or the other. That's a concern, And Danny, briefly mentioned it before we got on live, but this is the problem with a two-party system, because they're like, you got to either go left or right and these are the only options you have. And these are the only ideas that we have, and this is the only system we operate in. And I think that's a dangerous game to play, and especially for me, I've experienced racism in different forms all through my life. I've had people spit on me at 7 years old. I've been called the N-word at work from guests at my job, and I had to move on and shake it off, But guess what? Those things don't change because Trump's in office or if Biden's in office. There are things that have to happen on a local level. There are things that have to happen on a policy level that's really going to make some movement, you know. But that's kind of my question in a nutshell. But at the end of the day, if I'm an entrepreneur and you don't want to work with me because of my political leanings, left or right, then we don't need to do work together in the first place.
Can I ask Tony a quick question?
Yeah.
So we hear the word polarizing a lot. Tony, can you? And this is not a rhetorical question. Can you? And I'm curious, and I hear this so much as a Trump supporter. Can you cite me a glaring example of Trump polarizing this nation?
I didn't say he polarized it. I'm saying
Okay.
that with social media, because of some of the comments that he's made in the past, it's creating polarization.
Okay, can
so-
you give me can you give me one of those comments? I'm curious because I don't and this is I guess what's great about everyone has a different view. I don't see Trump. For the longest time, guys, we had this vision. This is years ago, where Trump was doing that thing. Remember, he did, and they freeze framed him, and he looked like he was making fun of somebody with a disability. There was a terrific way of the media that's just kind of emotion that he does. You know what I mean? But I would love to get, and we hear, and there's no untruth to that statement that we're definitely polarized. But I would love to get an example. Clearly, the differences are wide, and there's a contrast between, what's Joe Biden is going to do. But I really would like to know one issue, and maybe Eric, you can help me out here, where Trump what issue is polarizing this nation?
Well, there's an
Yeah, I think
accountability.
I can.
I think the thing is, like, for example, one of the first things that he did in office was there used to be a list publicly of people that would visit the White House. They removed that list. There was another issue where he said there are white supremacists good on both sides. There was another issue with the accountability of him not showing his taxes. He says it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And I appreciate him saying that he's willing to do it, but when are you going to do it? And then you say that, hey, if you reelect me, this is what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the problem is he keeps creating these promises, and he's saying that those people are fraudulent, or those people are not transparent, and those people are not accountable to their actions, when he's doing the very same things. So that's where it becomes polarizing. Because he's basically saying, do as I say, don't worry about what I do. And that's when what happens is if you're saying all these things, and then you're not backing up what you're saying, people are going to start asking questions, and they're like, all right, wait a minute. Every other president was transparent about their finances. Why can't you? That's a big issue. Why aren't you being transparent about your financial dealings? How come these stories keep coming out? If the New York Times is exposing, your tax funds, and you're saying that you're being audited, I've never heard a person be audited for 20 years. Maybe it's possible. I'm not a billionaire, but there's got to be something you can show.
Well, it did come out, but listen, that pales in comparison to what last week, a couple of weeks, Tucker Carlson has unleashed with the Hunter Biden stuff and the Burisma stuff. And I don't know how you can deny any of this stuff. And Joe Biden flat out lied that said he wasn't involved in the meeting and that he didn't know anything about the dealings. That was completely squashed, and that was anything but transparent. I really think that's small potatoes compared to that. I think I'll give you anything, if anything. And I'll just say, I think one of the most polarizing things that Trump may have said was, I believe it was North Carolina when the statues were coming down, when he said, and Trump has a tendency to misspeak, there were fine people on both sides, meaning, some of the white supremacists and the protesters. I think what he meant there, obviously that would polarize. What he meant there was there were some people on his side that weren't, KKK people that were legitimately protesting. So, like, I can say to you that you would probably agree that not all BLM people are rioters. Can we all agree on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so so there we go. Regarding that, I'll toss it back to you.
No, but Chris, those are good points, and I think that. What I would say to that is that, there's this phenomenon, right, where, you talk about a potato, and you talk about an egg, right? If you took a potato and you put it into boiling water, something happens to it, right? It gets softer, right? You take an egg, you put it into the same boiling water, it gets harder, right? So you can take essentially the same set of circumstances, and depending on your perspective, your point of view, your lived experiences,
Spin.
you put two, you put
Variables, dynamics.
but you put two people in the same scenario, you're going to have two different results. You're going to come out with two different, outcomes. So I think that that's a lot of what we have. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on the Social Dilemma, because I did watch it, and it is about how social media works. And basically, if you show yourself to believe certain things, you're inclined to believe certain things, like certain things, buy certain things, your social media is going to feed that continuously to you, right? They're not peeking through your windows and finding out. You're telling them, this is what I like, this is what I'm inclined to believe, and they respond by giving you more and more and more. Because what they really want is, they don't really want your opinion. They want your attention. They want your time. They want your eyeballs in front of their platform. So the way that they do that is they keep giving you more and more of what you've shown them that you're inclined to believe or like or support. And what happens over time is that you get very much immersed in a bubble of things that you already sort of believe to be true, which means that you don't get a lot of differing opinions to the contrary. That's what that documentary basically
Interesting.
proved and said. So that's why, for me, having someone like a Chris Palermo on my Twitter feed is good for me, right? I don't agree with any of it, almost. I'd say about 1%. And you said something one time.
But it's
You're really
entertaining.
funny.
Thank you.
You're actually hilarious as a person.
Thanks,
You really are.
thanks, man.
I agree with almost none of it, but I see it as something that I need to have, and I have to work hard to put it into my own mix.
You are a strong person for doing that, because what the aforementioned, the bombardment in the feed and those Jedi mind tricks aren't going to work on me. So I probably watch more MSNBC than all three of you guys combined here. I listen exclusively almost to NPR for a couple reasons. Number one, I think production-wise, most of the time they do a fantastic job, and I listen to particularly KNPR out in Nevada, and they pretty fair. I think sometimes they get a little too bleeding heart for me, but I do enjoy NPR. I listen to them quite a bit. So that is listen, I follow MSNBC people and in Twitter, and listen, there was a talk show host once that said there's nothing more boring than people that love you. How boring would that be? You're walking around, I'm not saying you want to go pick a fight with people, but it's good to have a little bit of spice of life when I sit around with my friends and we have cigars and whiskey and we're all going to love Trump. But you know what? Every good story needs is conflict.
Yeah. Well, invite me for that. I'll come to that cigar. If there's cigars there, I'll be there, and I'll hold the line from my side. I probably am gonna leave kind of mad, but I'll come. I'm just kidding. Let me just bring this in, because we have a question and or a comment. Let me bring this in from Mr. Sean Shoemate, who lives in Nevada, by the way, because I know, Chris, you're very interested in it.
Sure. Just came back from there.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yep,
right.
yep.
I know he's been out there for a little while. He's a great friend of mine. My thing is, out of all the qualified potential presidential candidates, this is the best two we have to offer in this day and age. I was disappointed in the Democratic nominee, but damn, pick your poison. Also, Eric, I like your point about looking to the future and the Howard connection between your daughter and Harris. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate that. And I think that sort of speaks a little bit to what I was saying earlier we all come to this. We arrive here today to this moment as a result, right? As a summary of everything that's happened to us up until this point. And that really shapes a lot of how we feel, maybe politically, socially, how we feel about finances, how we feel about maybe racial things, how we feel about money, how we feel about, the important sort of building blocks of our lives. And I think that we do forget a lot of times that my experience is completely different. It may be polar opposite from yours, Daniel, even though you're my cousin and you're a black man and I'm a black man. It doesn't mean that I should look at you and assume or superimpose my beliefs and thoughts onto you because you look like me and we're related. And I think that that's what we do. We look past, we're doing a lot of talking past each other because we want to get our point and make our point, score our points, and not really listen to the content that's coming back that maybe is something that we don't agree with or that we're not even hearing. We don't even know if we don't agree with it. We just know one thing. We saw you with a Make America Great hat. So that means we can't even start a conversation. I'm going to talk past you and I'm not going to listen to anything that you have to say. And I think that there needs to be that pullback, that drawback. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, what I think's beginning to be remiss is context. We've watched the film, The Social Dilemma, and how social media is feeding us things that they know that we're like, so we'll stay on the phone, because we're coming from a place in which, we were watching commercials and they didn't know what to market to us, right? We was having this conversation earlier, with Chris and Tony. Everything is on demand, so we got to see what we want. This is what we want. And I think in a way, it kind of changes the way that we think. Like now, I don't have to wait until 7 o'clock, to watch the basketball game. I could just record it and I could watch it when I want to. I could fast forward the commercials. And the thing is on social media, you don't have that privilege, but you do have the privilege of being able to pick and choose exactly what you want to be in your face. And I think that, a big issue is the news outlets. To tag along to Chris in a way, they're not giving you the full context. When Trump was speaking about, good people on both sides, he was talking about people who wanted to keep the statues up and the people who wanted to take the statues down. Because in that same speech, I don't know if anybody, heard the entire speech or the entirety of it, he condemned supremacy in that same exact speech. But nobody talks about that because nobody is listening to the news outlets that's going to allow you to, that's going to give you privy access, to the entirety of the dialogue. I literally just pulled up, the whole, dialogue between him and the person interviewing him. And I think that, on social media more than anything, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we can, be very honest. Me, I guess, being in the middle and kind of flipping the bird to both sides. I can kind of see, how, everyone is being played in a way. Chris was saying that he should, strictly listens to MSNBC. But if he were to turn on to CNN, he'll get a completely different story. If he were to turn on Fox, he'll get a completely different story. And, I think that, as a community, as a country, we need to start holding the news outlets accountable for actually giving us the full story. You said that you were, I guess, impartial to Kamala because she went to, an HBCU. Trump permanently funded HBCUs. They used to have to go to the White House and beg for money every year. Most Black people don't know that or don't care. And the reason they don't care is because they've heard so many negative things about Donald Trump that they can't see anything positive in it. Prison reform. Donald Trump signed a bill for prison reform. Opportunity zones. That's, directly affects Black community. Prison incarceration rates for Black men are down 21%. And then, when we talk about, hey, well, and don't get me wrong, I'm not the biggest Trump fan because I think he's terrible for the economy because, he's lowering tax rates, but all we're doing is borrowing from the future. We're not going to get into semantics, but, there are several good and bad things on both ends. Sometimes the good outweigh the bad if we can actually see the full context of things. But, again, everything is on demand and, the media is, kind of using us as pawns to push their narrative because, I think that we would all be kind of, misled if we were to say that, the media is being impartial and giving us the full story.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things you said, Chris, which I thought was interesting, is that you listen to a lot of NPR, listen to MSNBC. I want to show you this. This is sort of where the election stands right now. And what's really interesting is that MSNBC and CNN kind of have the similar tally. It's Fox that actually has credited Biden more. Let me just bring that back up. Fox has actually credited Biden with more electoral college votes, which I thought was remarkable because, I feel a certain way about Fox. I think just like everyone feels a certain way about all of these. But Daniel, you're 100% right. If we just go to one source, if we don't take time to do our own due diligence and we are just taking in little bites that are fed to us either in our social media or on our cable news outlet of choice, we're really going to have a very skewed view of things. However, I don't think the average person either is willing or, quite frankly, has the time to do the fuller research required to know all of the sort of nuanced, or maybe, is there something that I like? And one of the ideas I had for this talk was that at the end, towards the end, and we're getting closer to the end, is that I really wanted you guys to each kind of tell me what you would say if your candidate didn't win. What would you say to the other side, to people in general? What would you say to yourself? Because we don't know who's won yet, but what would you be saying? And we'll do that towards the end. But I think that that's the important thing, is that due diligence, context, as you said, Chris, as you said, going and seeking alternative sources for your news or your information, or just to have sort of a general idea. That's something that is really, really missed.
I was just going to say real quick here then, Eric, and all that stuff, but a lot of people don't have the passion. Obviously, you contacted us three here, but we have the passion for it. Now, Eric, you and I will take that a step further because we're both in the news business too. So we come from a news factory too. So I'm a total news junkie. But absolutely, I think it's very important. Now, listen, there are some clear publications that have a clear slant to it. All right, and I'll give you on the right, maybe a Breitbart on the right, and if you want to go far left, I don't know what's out there. Maybe what is it again?
Cuomo. What's his name? Chris Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo.
Oh, good, easily. Or Politico. Is Politico a left? Or how about the Boston Globe? Would you guys say Boston Globe leans pretty left?
I think the Boston Globe is probably reflective of the community it serves. Yes.
You are so tactful.
Boston in general leans left.
But yeah, no, you're right. There's a lot of sourcing out there. There's a lot of sourcing out there, and we have to be able to figure out. Now, I'll tell you, my daughter, when she was in middle school, they introduced the idea of having media literacy as a course. There was a whole year-long course on media literacy, helping people recognize and understand what they're consuming as media. And I thought that was a great idea. I'd also like to see them have, financial planning and entrepreneurship as part of your core.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's another conversation for another time, maybe another show. Tony, I'm gonna put that in the notebook, I guess. Yeah. But she had media literacy at a young age, something I never had, something I sorely think that is sorely needed, because people don't know what they're looking at. People don't know what's real and what isn't. But what I want to do, and for this last few minutes, because this has been an incredible conversation. What I do want to do is I want to go around the room again one more time virtually, and ask you the question. Let's fast forward. We'll get into our Facebook time machine, and we'll fast forward to say next Monday we have a clear result. And for me, the result is Donald Trump has won. What would I say? For Chris, it would be Joe Biden.
Mhm.
For Daniel, it'd be either one, right? and for Tony, it would be Donald Trump is one. So I'm going to maybe start in the middle with Daniel. And Daniel, what would you say to anyone who didn't vote for your candidate now that the election has been decided?
I would say, I think people in general, more so people who look like me, I'm not going to use the word minorities. I'm going to use the word black men because it seems as if, they try to encompass us with everyone else when, a lot of times we need to vote on issues that directly relate to us. So I would say, don't be afraid to step away, from the political plantation. We don't have to vote, blue when, it's time for an election. I'm not going to get into, who was in office and what they did when they were there and everything like that. But, I think that people go after, the black vote for a reason. I believe that we are the pendulum that swings the election. You take away, the 20 million votes that we have right now, and Donald Trump has a clean sweep all across the nation. So we have to understand that, we do have political power. I know earlier you spoke in regards to, people being aware of who they're voting for and not having time or the aptitude to know where to go to actually look for the information. I think that, schools should, teach that as well, along with, the media, education and things of that nature. So, for whatever side were to win, I would say, next time around, let's not pay attention to the rhetoric or how people feel, because I don't have to like you to vote for you. I have to look at your policies and I have to like what your policies stand for and how they directly impact me and how it's going to affect me and my family, because that's what's important. We could talk about, land in North Dakota all day, every day, but land in North Dakota isn't going to do much for me here in Miami. So I have to focus on things that are going to directly affect me. And again, my children, because some of these things aren't going to, be effective to us 10, 15, 20 years down the line. It might even be, our grandchildren that it's going to affect. But, always think for yourself. Don't allow the media to think for you. And before you make a decision as important as voting for a presidential candidate, we have to know why we're voting for this person, not just for the sake of voting against someone, but have a reason to put someone in a position to be the most powerful person in the world, because that shouldn't come lightly. Because being a person who has served, I've lost friends. I have friends who are still over there. I don't think that we should allow someone to take an office just because we didn't like the other person to have the authority on sending someone's child to war. I think that's a bit reckless. And, as a country, I think that we should, band together a little bit more and be a little bit more educated and informed on how to put the right people in place and hold them accountable to the promises that they said they would keep.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Daniel. Tony, fast forward into time. Donald Trump has won the election. What would you say to yourself, to others, to that support that decision and are against it? What would your message be going forward?
I would just hope that people are more willing to work across the aisle. I don't necessarily. I mean, we've heard the terminology all the time that we need to come together and so on and so forth. I think people need to get real about what's really happening in America in terms of racial disparities, financial disparities, and so on and so forth. And we need to see real policies actually pass forward. I'm sick and tired of calling people names and whatever it be, Sleepy Joe or Pelosi and stupid stuff like that. That doesn't affect me. I don't care about things like that. What I care about, what are you going to do for my people and what are you going to do for my country? And I kind of to touch on what Daniel was mentioning too, is if you have the power to send, young soldiers across the country, I need to know that you're not being flippant in your decision making, So I would hope that he'd be a little bit more cognizant of what he says. He tends to misspeak, but as the president of the United States and the leader of the free world, you can't misspeak. every piece of your word is going to be analyzed and scrutinized and things of that nature. So mean what you say. If you're going to do something, follow through with it. And I think that'll go a long way for him. Whether people like him or not, he can actually create some legitimate change and people can get behind him. But if he continues to vilify the media and vilify people that don't agree with him, that's going to create a lot of issues. And that was one thing, I think that was a big issue. Yes, the media can skew information, which we need to be responsible to kind of do our due diligence. But at the same time, if you have a tough interview with Fox News and you love them one day and you hate them the next day, that's not a real president, in my opinion. You're just being an asshole. I think that's a real concern of mine. If you're a president and you get mad if someone asks you a question you don't like, you're the president of the United States. So I hope that he and the people that work with him are more cooperative in the sense of just, let's focus on progress.
Excellent. And finally, Chris, same question for you. We've gone fast forward in time. Joe Biden has won the election. What's your message to people that support your position, people that were on the other side, and maybe a message to yourself too?
I fully expect that to be the case too, Eric. I'm a realist here. I really think that whether I'd say the majority of the votes are legit, or we'll see what happens. I just want to say that I believe that Joe Biden, his policies are extremely dangerous to me, my family, my friends, my wealth, and I would say to people that I love what Tony had to say, where let's cross the aisle. You know what? I think we're too far gone. I think people, like-minded people, are going to amass geographically in areas like me in Massachusetts here. If I want to go to, for example, the grocery store and use some plastic bags rather than having paper bags break all over me, we certainly can coexist. The liberal ideology, what gets to me is, if you want to save the whales and if you want to drive a Prius and if you are concerned about guns and you don't feel comfortable around a gun, you don't have to participate. If you don't want to buy, if you don't like the sugar that's in a big gulp, you don't have to have it. But what gets to me is the mandating of these on these issues. So what I think is, personally, with Joe Biden presidency, I think that folks, especially folks that have worked very hard, should be very conservative with their money. So what's going to happen here, you see the theme here, the folks and that are the producers and the people that hire people, this is going to, and Mr. Steve Forbes said this too, the economy is going to stagnate and rents are going to go through the roof because Joe is proposing these capital gains taxes. And I want to tell you something, landlords and property investors, they're not in it for charity. So if you think that we have an affordable housing problem right now, we're going to be in really big trouble. You're already seeing it right here. So I really feel for people that are going to be looking for affordable housing, because I think Joe's and Kamala's proposals. Furthermore, I think that the way Joe wants to neuter the police department sends a signal, whether he does it or not. The fact of he wants to bring out social workers, just the talk of this, and you can see across the country that legions of police unions have backed Donald Trump. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to see criminals realize that with Joe in charge, the tech stocks, by the way, are already reflecting because they know what's going to happen with Joe here. And I would say that to the people that did not vote for Joe, like my folks, certainly, and I myself, I know my folks, I don't necessarily, or I don't ever see conservatives out rioting. I don't condone, or I have many of my friends are conservatives. I am an actor. I'm in academia. As you can imagine, most of the people I deal with have conservative leanings, and I have a lot of fun with those people, and I respect those people. but I don't agree with those policies. I think, here's a word for you that the media loves. I think we need to pivot, we need to adapt, we need to make adjustments. This is something that Bill Belichick seems to be doing every Sunday with the Patriots, because I think it is going to be a long, hard road, and get involved with politics, and please obey the law.
Okay, so
It's quite a bit, huh? It's quite a bit to digest.
A lot to say, but I appreciate it. I appreciate you, Chris. Daniel, I appreciate you. Tony, I appreciate you. I'm going to just leave it with this. Fast forward, Donald Trump has won in this time machine, in this hypothetical question that I'm asking. What I would say is that if you don't agree with the results, work hard for the candidates and the causes that matter to you on your own level, whatever that means, to affect change. You're not going to be doing it in the comment sections of Facebook. You're not going to be doing it in some magical tweet that you put out that you think is so funny or clever. Do the real work to affect the change that you want. That's really the only thing that I would say to others, or I'd say to myself, if I am not satisfied with the results of this or any election. Also, I'd urge everyone, I'd really encourage everybody, get involved with your local politics, because that's where real changes are made that impacts your life on a daily basis. And so that's about it. We're right up against the clock here. I want to thank each and every one of you for your thoughtfulness, your frankness, your insight. These are the conversations that we have to start having a lot more of. And I'm going to put a standing invitation out to all three of you. Anytime you want to talk politics on Wednesdays at 1, please come back. We'll have you on. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye to my audience, goodbye to my guests. We're going to see what happens. But thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you next Wednesday at 1 on the Wednesdays at 1 show. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good night.